Welcome to Optimus Minimus, and this is a brief video on historicity of Trojan War, which in a way serves as an introduction to our next video, where we're gonna talk about Trojan War in the films that were released in the past 20 years. So don't miss that one, and obviously don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notifications. Trojan War is a subject of many Greco-Roman myths and epic poetry. Most prominently, as we all know, it is a setting for Homer's The Iliad, quite probably the oldest existing complete piece of long-form literature we have. Other ancient literary texts are either incomplete or short, so no, it's not the story of Gilgamesh, which is incomplete and discovered suspiciously late, only in the 19th century. And religious texts can be and should be ignored, although indeed they can be considered literature. So did this Trojan War really happen? It is almost impossible to know for sure, but we can be 100% certain that there were conflicts in this area at this exact time frame that involved people from the Greek world. And we know that ancient authors, including Herodotus, the father of history, and Thucydides, the real father of history, they all believed that Trojan War was an actual historical event, not just a myth. And they clearly understood that there was a lot of fiction built around this event in the centuries that came after the war. But for them, the war was real. Historians are trying hard to figure out when and where the main inspiration for the Trojan War has happened, but it is generally believed that it happened something like 6 or 7 centuries before Herodotus, and it probably involved the city of Troy, or Ilium, the one that Heinrich Schliemann excavated. Although there are other candidates for the location, including Pergamum, or some area around Pergamum. Possible causes of the military conflicts are quite obvious if you look at the map, and they don't really include abductions of women from Sparta. So if we identify Troy or the myths with the Schliemann's Troy, the hill of Hisarlik in present-day Turkey, the picture is quite clear. The ruins of Troy, or if you want to be more precise, ruins of different Troys from different periods, are located near the modern city of Çanakkale, which occupies more or less the same location as the ancient city of Abydos, a prominent city in its own way, because it is a place which allows you to control the Hellespont, also known as the Strait of the Dardanelles. This strait, just like its brother, the Bosphorus in ancient Byzantium, is a place of huge strategical importance. This is the entrance to the Black Sea, and also a place where you can easily cross from Europe to Asia and from Asia to Europe, which, for instance, has been done by Xerxes, exactly at Abydos. Politics and warfare are mostly dictated by geography. This is not a new thought, and there are great books on that, most prominently Robert Kaplan's The Revenge of Geography. And this approach of look at the map for God's sake is entirely justified when we're talking about the Trojan War. The straits, the Bosphorus and the Dardanelles, are so important that the control over them sparked numerous conflicts. The control was absolutely critical for the Greek states and for Byzantium, it was critical for Ottomans, it was a long-term strategical goal for Russia, all for obvious geopolitical reasons. It is safe to say that the Trojan War was mostly about the straits, not about the Spartan princess who probably either never existed or wasn't present at Troy at all. If we read Thucydides, he didn't care much about the mythological aspect. He quite bluntly says that the war wasn't about this oath of the Greek or proto-Greek kings about the marriage of Helen. It was about the growing power of Agamemnon. He also mentions that the whole scale of the war was inflated by the poets and the number of the allied Greek troops was relatively small, if you take into the account the overall state of Hellas in this period of history. And these troops had serious problems with the supplies, so they had to do some farming in the area and participate in the pirate raids around the area, so they could, just have something to eat. What was probably more important is the aftermath of this war, which led to numerous wars back in the Greek homeland, and, in the end, to what the historians call the Greek Dark Ages, which followed the fall of Mycenaean civilization. Herodotus wasn't interested in the real Trojan War much, although he discussed it a bit, mostly from a somewhat mythological perspective. Thucydides used Trojan War in his introduction to the history of the Peloponnesian War. For Herodotus, it was a part of the build-up to the main topic of his own work, wars with the Persians. And he was talking about the conflicts between Europe and Asia, mostly through the lens of abductions of mythological women, including Helen. And his conclusion was that Helen probably was never present in Troy. Otherwise, Priam and the Trojans would have given her back to the Hellenes immediately. But they just couldn't do this. For him, Helen was in Egypt, which is a separate story accepted by a number of authors. There is a myth of the Phantom Helen, the Eidolon of Helen, and there is a play of Euripides called Helen, which tells the story of Helen, who was sitting in Egypt for 17 years waiting for her husband. In this context, one can also remember the works of Dio Chrysostom, who lived in the Roman Empire during the reign of the Flavian dynasty and later the Antonine dynasty. Dio Chrysostom wasn't really a historian. He was a philosopher, a peculiar hybrid of a Platonist, a cynic, and a stoic. One of his discourses talks about, at great length, about the story of the Trojan War and the works of Homer. And he was pretty sure that Helen couldn't really be the cause of war. If anything, she was probably a wife of Alexander, Paris, and she was married with a full consent of her family. Otherwise, there is no logical explanation why her closest relatives, brothers Castor and Pollux, had absolutely no objections and never participated in the Trojan campaign. Dio Chrysostom is also one of the few people who actually believed that the Trojan War was won by the Trojans. Because, once again, this is where we come to the aftermath of the war. And the aftermath is struggle between various Greek states followed by the Dark Ages. At the same time, the Trojans start founding colonies here and there, including Italy and Epirus, which is a northwestern area of Greece. So I hope all of this gives you some food for thought and establishes a foundation of sorts for our next video about the Trojan War and the movies. A quick summary. The ancients believed that the Trojan War was an actual historical event, and it probably was. It was a conflict or a series of conflicts between the Mycenaean civilization and the inhabitants of the region around the Hellespont. And the main focus of the conflict was most probably the straits and the control of the trade. The immediate aftermath was a struggle between the Hellenes and a period of demise in the Greek heartland, which can be interpreted as a defeat of the Hellenes, although much later, as we know, the Hellenes colonized the coast of Asia Minor or Anatolia, and various Greek states controlled the straits and founded more colonies around the coast of the Black Sea. Not only the northern coast of present-day Turkey, but also the coast of present-day Bulgaria, Romania, Ukraine, and Russia. If you want to share some thoughts about it, I strongly encourage you to leave a comment. Also, don't forget to subscribe, share, like, and, well, you can watch this video 5 times or 10 times at double speed. So thanks for watching and rewatching, and see you soon.